Last week was a very wild week for the Pittsburgh Pirates and baseball in general. So we're going to talk about all of that here on the Locked On Pirates podcast, brought to you by Game Time.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast, everybody, here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day. My name is Ethan Smith, your host of this wonderful show here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And as mentioned, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, my name is Ethan Smith. I've been a lifelong Pirates fan for, my entire life, and I have turned that lifelong fandom into information for all of you, bringing you your analysis, opinions, reactions, and everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates. And last week, folks, was a week for this baseball team. It was a week filled with storylines abound going on in Pirates baseball. Kicking off the week, obviously, coming off the heels of a major series victory over the Chicago Cubs the prior weekend, winning 3 of 4 at Wrigley Field. It looked like this team was finally starting to kind of roll things a little bit. They win on Tuesday against the San Francisco Giants 7-6. Things look up for them. That was obviously a big win for them. I spoke about that on last week's show, with that being a massive comeback victory for this team, especially off the heels of that Chicago Cubs series. And then this is where the week started to get interesting and wild and whatever other adjective you want to use, because the Pirates were dominating the Giants game on Wednesday, up 5-0 in that one, end up losing the game 9-5. The following day, they're up by 4 runs, 6-2. They give up 5 in the 8th inning. They lose that game. So then they come into a very tough series against a very tough Atlanta Braves team, and they found a way to win that series in the first 2 games. Dominated the Braves on Friday evening in the City Connects, winning 11-5. Played a pretty good all-around game on Saturday as well, 4-1 victory. Mitch Keller has just continued to look phenomenal in the month of May, and I believe I don't think he'll get one more start in this month, but he did cap off just a phenomenal month of May for himself. And then you had the game yesterday where Chris Sale just pitched a phenomenal ball game. The Pirates just didn't really get much going, and there was a lot of other things that happened in that game that we'll get to shortly. But there was a lot of different things to like here about the week that we saw from the Pittsburgh Pirates. Obviously, the starting pitching continued to look very good. Bailey Falter looked really good again. Mitch Keller, as mentioned, has had a phenomenal month of May, and it looks like it could be a springboard for a phenomenal season from Mitch Keller, who obviously got the big contract extension to begin the year in spring training. Paul Skeens and Jared Jones continue to do good things. Paul Skeens, as mentioned, I was in attendance on Thursday, did not really have his best stuff in that game and still found a way to manage to have a very good outing. Jared Jones continues to have good outings and keep himself in the NL Rookie of the Year conversation. And the offense has also kind of picked it up as of late as well. We'll get into that a little bit more later in the day. But it's nice to see now that this team is finding ways to win and also just picking up victories along the way. They're 25-29 now, almost at the end of the month of May. We'll have a May recap probably later this week. They're still obviously in striking distance in the National League Central. The Cardinals have picked it up as of late. They're 25-26. The Chicago Cubs are 27-26. Milwaukee 30-22. Still plenty of time left for this Pirates team to figure it out. But again, you look at some of these guys who have kind of propelled the Pirates a little bit as of late. You look at the guys like Nick Gonzalez, who has had a phenomenal string of things since coming back to the Pittsburgh Pirates roster. As I mentioned the other day on Twitter, already surpassing a lot of guys on the roster in terms of RBIs. Excuse me. And I mean, when you look at his OPS, he doesn't have the numbers yet to really qualify, but RBI wise, he's done very good, already at 14 RBIs on the year. And supplanting him in the middle of that lineup has seemed like it's going to work wonders for this lineup. Again, 56 at-bats, an 841 OPS, 2 home runs, 14 RBIs, a 286 average. He's getting it done in the middle of the lineup. And that was something that before Nick Gonzalez arrived, we haven't really seen from this Pirates roster just yet. We haven't really seen the guys send it off to the middle of the lineup and things really work, because we've seen Andrew McCutchen pick it up as of late. Brian Reynolds is always going to be a staple in the lineup. Connor Joe, albeit Connor Joe has slowed down a little bit, he's still a very valuable bat in this lineup. Then you have O'Neal Cruz, who has had quite the season so far. He's been at his highest, he's been at his lowest. But after that, there really hasn't been anybody that you can look at and pinpoint and say, yeah, this guy was handing it off to the lower parts of the lineup or taking care of everything that we were seeing with the top of the lineup. They've been batting Gonzalez usually in the 5-hole, and I think it's worked wonders for this offense so far and wonders for what this offense can potentially do. Now, obviously, Ke'Bryan Hayes appears that he might be returning soon. That's going to shake some things up. We'll obviously talk about that in the second segment of today's show. But to recap, fully recap the week, you had a 3-3 week against a team in the Atlanta Braves who are going to still be a playoff team. By the way, let me address this as well. It absolutely sucks that Ronald Acuna tore his ACL. He's one of baseball's most electrifying players. He's one of its stars. They already have lost Spencer Strider this year. The Braves are just getting hit by injuries left and right. You could see the Braves be pretty active at the trade deadline trying to patch some of these things, because they are still going to be a playoff team, I think. I do think now this is the Phillies' year to kind of take over the NL East. Obviously, the Phillies have been off to a phenomenal start. But for the Braves, it's tough. It's tough to lose your best hitter, arguably, albeit I know Acuna was not having a crazy year, but you lose your arguably best hitter and your ace pitcher. So we'll see how the Braves manage that. But when you manage a 3-3 week against the San Francisco Giants team that is in the wild card hunt right now, I believe, they're tied with San Diego for that final wild card spot at this current moment, 8-2 in their last 10 games. But you managed to, you should have won those 2 games. We all know that, but we're not going to harp on that anymore. So you go 3-3 against these 2 teams, and I think that that's pretty worthwhile, especially a series victory, again, over an Atlanta Braves team, 10 games over 500 exiting the series. You managed to have an opportunity to sweep them for the first time in 7 years. And now you go into this week where, you're going to play the Detroit Tigers, who you split with earlier this year at home. Obviously, it's the Jim Leland Cup, as I like to call it. And it's only usually 2 games. And you have some fun matchups in this. You have Jones and Skeens and Flaherty, or Jones, Skeens, Flaherty, and Skubal going in this one. And then you face a Toronto Blue Jays team that not really meeting expectations again in Toronto. So you go into a week after coming off a week where you play 2 teams from obviously in your league that are going to probably be involved in the playoff race all the way through, and you manage 3-3. And the Pirates right now, again, it is frustrating to talk about what could have happened earlier this week and where they could have been and what could be going on with this team. But naturally, that's baseball. They're still 4 games under 500. There's still plenty of time to go. They're very much involved in the wild card conversation, as a lot of other teams are right now, by Memorial Day. And that's usually when I like to look at the standings and see where everybody kind of sits and get a good gauge of where these teams are going to be. And right now for the Pittsburgh Pirates, they're there. The starting pitching is there. The offense is slowly but surely getting there. And speaking of the offense, we're going to talk about what is going to happen to this lineup when Ke'Bryan Hayes eventually returns, because it might not be as simple as you think. Before we do that, be right back. Today's episode of Locked On Pirates is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, and with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. You get priority last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% off when you're buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And Game Time's lowest price guarantee will credit you 110% of the difference if you find tickets in the same section and row for less somewhere else. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off, and download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And folks, welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day. And by the way, happy Memorial Day to everyone. Please take the time today to remember everybody who sacrificed way more than anybody could ask for overseas, and to thank all of our veterans as well, and remember those that we have lost. Also, make sure you check out Locked On Sports Today, 24/7 streaming channel on the Locked On Podcast Network. You can find it on YouTube and Amazon Fire TV, getting news from all the local hosts of Locked On, including me. You can find all of that, and it never, ever stops. So this team has picked it up offensively as of late, had a very good offensive week this past week, as we all know. Only the one run yesterday, but 4 on Saturday, 11 on Friday, 6 on Thursday, 5 on Wednesday, 7 on Tuesday. Friday, I'm in love. There you go. Hopefully you guys all get that reference. Ke'Bryan Hayes will eventually be coming back to this Pittsburgh Pirates roster, and obviously will be playing third base when he returns. So it is interesting to kind of concoct what's going to happen here when Ke'Bryan Hayes returns, because there are a lot of moving parts that are required for Hayes to enter back into the lineup. Now, for most of you, the corresponding move would just be get rid of Rowdy Tellez, and then you'll just be happy. And I know most people will just be satisfied with that, and they'll be happy with that, and that's fine, because that's probably what the corresponding move is going to be. More than likely, when Ke'Bryan Hayes is ready to come back, Rowdy Tellez will more than likely be designated for assignment, and you will not have to worry about him ever again. But what gets interesting with bringing Hayes back is the moving parts in the infield that we've seen and where those parts go. Because right now, the way that this team has constructed itself, Connor Joe is more than likely going to be a first baseman more often than not. He'll play the outfield still a little bit, but once they get rid of Tellez, that'll open up a whole can of worms. Nick Gonzalez right now, folks, I don't think you can take Nicky G off of second base. I just truly don't. I mean, it would be stupid to, first of all, because he's been hitting the ball all over the yard. He's been an RBI machine. He's been, doing everything right that they could ask of him right now. So you're not taking him off of second base. O'Neal Cruz, you're not taking him off shortstop. So you already have first, second, and shortstop kind of taken care of. Then you look at third base and you say, okay, when Hayes comes back, does Jared Friolo have a spot on this team? Does Alika Williams have a spot on this roster? It's very interesting to think about, because there are moving parts all over the place. We've already seen Jack Sawinski get sent down. We've already seen Henry Davis get sent down. And you're going to probably see a guy like Jared Triolo get sent down when Hayes comes back. Now, Jared Triolo, obviously, of the players that could do it, makes me the most comfortable defensively when Ke'Bryan Hayes is not able to play the third base position. And Triolo has made some great plays defensively over there already. But you're looking at a guy that's batting 203 right now. He's struggling at the plate. And a 562 OPS, 3 homers, 18 RBIs, just not really what he was doing last year. And we looked at his BABIP last year, and we looked at a lot of other different metrics last year that offered why that was probably an over exaggeration in terms of his stats. I didn't expect this kind of drop off from a guy like Jared Triolo, though. I did think that he was a contact machine, could put the ball over the fence occasionally. He just hasn't done it. I mean, he's batting 192 in his last 15 games, albeit 2 homers and 7 RBIs, 6 walks in that span. But you're not sending down Gonzalez. And then you have a guy like Alika Williams, who I mentioned, who has had a pretty decent season. I mean, only 2 RBIs, but he's a guy much like Triolo that can play defensively, second base, shortstop. I don't know how much he could really play third. 220 average, 551 OPS. He's cooled off considerably. So is Triolo just by de facto the guy that gets sent down when Ke'Bryan Hayes returns? It's actually kind of an interesting conversation because, I mean, Williams and Triolo could both go down. We've already seen Alika Williams go down and then get called right back up. He probably never even left Pittsburgh when Hayes was initially put on the injured list. So we could see Alika Williams go down and Triolo just back up third, but it is going to create a lot of flux in the lineup. I really think so. And then you factor into this now, too, that we still don't have updates on Martin Perez and Joey Bart, who could be out for an extended period of time as well. They both got injured in the game yesterday. Big reason why the Pirates lost. It's always going to be hard to win a baseball game when your starting pitcher and your starting catcher get hurt in consecutive innings. And Perez, I think, is a little bit less harsh as far as how things will be impacted on the roster. I think it would just be as simple as bringing back Quinn Priester if he's out for an extended period of time. Priester has shown flashes of what he can do this year. I think I've liked what I've seen from Quinn Priester this year. I think he's finally kind of tipping up towards some of that potential that we know he has. Joey Bart is the one that kind of bothers me because I don't think Henry Davis is ready to come back just yet. I still think he needs some time in AAA and some time to keep hashing things out and figuring some things out about himself. So then you have Grant Koch as your backup catcher behind a Yasmani Grandal, who also has had an injury scare or two already. Behind the plate, it's getting a little weird. And if Joey Bart goes out, I don't know if you're comfortable bringing Henry Davis back just yet. And that's an interesting thing. So you could see quite a bit of roster shakeup over the next week and change, especially when Hayes is ready to return and when you start seeing some of these other guys maybe pick up some steam. And that's something that you want to see. Now, you obviously have the guys who are supplanted on the roster and are going to be here for quite a bit. But I do think it's interesting to see what happens when Hayes returns. And hopefully when Ke'Bryan Hayes returns, some of that bat speed and that bat returns that we saw from the final 2 months of last season. And we know the glove will be there regardless. Folks, we're going to talk about the bullpen in just a moment and what in the world the Pirates do about this bullpen in just a moment. Be right back. Today's episode of Locked On Pirates is also brought to you by Supply House. Shop Supply House for all of your plumbing, HVAC, and electrical product needs at supplyhouse.com because, folks, get supplies from the site that made the skilled trades, and that's supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is a reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources, and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. If you need help with an order, get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. So join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. And welcome back to the third and final segment of today's episode of Locked On Pirates. Everybody here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day. Folks, we already know what the issue has been in the month of May. The month of May has seen this bullpen pretty much have just a terrible run of things. It's been absolutely awful. You really can't figure it out right now. I don't think that there's a lot of analysis behind it outside of the fact that I just think this bullpen is in a rut. And these guys are coming into games as a collective, and it's not working at all. I mean, David Bednar has picked it up as of late. Colin Holderman has been one of the best relievers in baseball, especially the National League this year. And this is a bullpen unit that before the season, myself and everybody was saying that it had the potential of being a top 10 unit in all of baseball. And now, exiting May, they're going to probably have the worst ERA among relievers in baseball in May. And it's a problem. I mean, you go back to that Giants series and you win those games if the bullpen doesn't blow up. And that goes to everybody almost in that entire unit. Luis Ortiz, who they've basically just been shadowing out for whatever reason, isn't getting enough playing time. And when he does, if he comes in and there's guys on the base pass, he's going to struggle. That's just how Luis Ortiz is. Carmen Mlodzinski, after a phenomenal rookie season, obviously started the year on the injured list earlier this year, hasn't really had it so far. Kyle Nicholas has had his moments, but he's had his issues too. Hunter Stratton has been pretty good, but he's had his moments. Aroldis Chapman, who you gave $10.5 million to this offseason, you can almost dictate how Chapman's outing is going to go through the first three pitches. And he does this, and you're going to hear me go kind of more fan here for a second. He does this thing where he'll pitch 92 to 93 mile an hour and then ramp up to 99. And it confuses the hell out of me because you're only pitching one inning. You're pitching one inning. You don't need to be ramping up your pitch. You're not going to go longer than an inning. So what are you doing? And what I mean that you could see how an outing for him is going to go, folks, if he throws two strikes on the first two pitches, you can usually bank that it's going to be a pretty damn good outing for Aroldis Chapman. If he throws two balls, hold on to your butts. And that's what we've had to do quite a bit lately, just with this bullpen in general. And again, I think a lot of it too, and this is where I caution people before they really go off the schneid about it, is I would say, look at what this offense was 3 weeks ago. This was an offense that a lot of us had just written off and said, it's done, it's garbage, they need to just fire Andy Haynes and change a lot of things up. Well, you've introduced G1 Bay, Nick Gonzalez to the fold. You've pretty much shadowed out Rowdy Tellez, and the offenses look better. The starting pitching, which we thought was going to be a massive weakness this year, has been their biggest strength, thanks to Bailey Falter and Skeens and Jones and Keller. and Perez at times. Now the bullpen is having its issue. They're not going to have this issue forever. This is a unit that will eventually figure itself out. I think the thing that scares me and a lot of you is when the bullpen figures it out, what's next? And again, this is baseball. You're going to have your hot parts of the season. You're going to have your cold parts of the season. But we've heard Gary say it, and as you guys probably noticed, Gary's not with me today, but he has other things going on today, so it's just me, obviously. But you cannot have a group of players that you're counting on your roster all collectively go cold at the same time. And we've seen that happen a lot already. We've seen it especially with the offense, where I think even Greg Brown joked that 8 of the 9 guys weren't hitting a couple weeks ago, and he's not exactly wrong. And you can't have that. And for the bullpen's sake, that's what's happening right now. Halderman and Bednar, right now, I think are the only 2 guys that when I look at when they come in the game, I feel good about it. But those guys can't pitch every single day. And you're telling me that I'm only relying on 2 relievers right now? That's not good. But I implore everyone on this that it will not be that bad of a unit forever. They just do have to figure it out, because at this current point and where the Pirates are as a team, games like that Giants series, you got to win those. And going into this week against Toronto and Detroit, very winnable series. And you're going in to this Detroit series facing one of the best pitchers in baseball in Tarek Skubal and Jack Flaherty, which we'll obviously talk about that a lot more tomorrow. You're going to have close games. Pirates have played in the top 5 in 1 to 2 run games this year. It's been that kind of season for this team. And when you're playing in those games, folks, you got to win them more often than not. And 9 times out of 10, it's dictated by which team's bullpen wins them the game. Because right now, if a Pirates starter isn't going 8 innings, you don't feel confident about winning the game unless they are putting up a lot of runs. Because the bullpen comes in and it just hasn't looked good. That's what it boils down to. They'll figure it out, just like the offense figured it out. Just like the starting pitching staff figured it out. And it'll eventually lead to some good baseball from the bullpen. Let's just hope it's sooner rather than later. Folks, thank you so much for tuning into the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day. My name is Ethan Smith. Follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates. This show is free and available to you on YouTube and all of your audio platforms. Hit the notification bell so you know when this show is coming to your airwaves. Folks, thank you so much. Have a wonderful Memorial Day. We'll be back tomorrow to discuss the Tiger series and everything else going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates. But until then, see you on the flip side.